Jayodiri. Neshta Prayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Seviham Bhagavati Uttamashoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Nigama Kaparur Garitam Param Shukam Makara Vita Javisamidam Vivatam Bhagatam Vashamaya Horishikubi Bakaham. Krishna Sadam Bhagate Dhammagene Karunashta Vishamasho Paranuko Dunoditam. Tamapiyadavashuta Vishutam Vibhu Samapirana Vidam Vidakshanam Prakyahi Dahormadam Sanklation Uvanam Santi Nanyatam. Ātmavān Nagrantika Karvanti Adikam Hita Mutaganari. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinu Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radakanta Mostute Jayatam Surito Pango Mama Manir Matirgati Matsavasha Paramboja Radana Madana Mohanam Sriman Rasa Rasaram Vibham Sivara Karsan Veneration Urpaga Gopinata Sriyasanam Divyad Brindaranya Kapadrumada Srimad Ratnagana Shima Sanasto Sri Siya Radha Shila Govinda Prasadabihi Sevamana Shmarami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmani Taya Chajigatitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Mangalam Bhagavan Vishnu Mangaram Guru Rajacham Mangaram Padari Kaksho Mangaraya Tano Hari Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasadevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Prachodhyate Om Mahadevi Cha Vidmahi Vishnu Padni Cha Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Prachodhyate Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Sare Sare Hare Pire Namastubhyam Dhyana Tapti Kanchana Gauranga Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sute Devi Pranamani Hare Pire. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinu Bandhu Jagapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Namoshnute Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktabindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome to Motivational Monday, John on Facebook Live, Rob on Zoom. Yesterday we had, because of the Bhagavad Gita Jayanti anniversary day, it's the celebration of the day that Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita 5,300 years ago. He spoke in the month of December, and today I believe the Gita Jayanti falls on the 19th or the 22nd of September, one of those two dates. So Gonzo, one of our congregational members, sponsored the distribution of, I think, 20 to 30 softback Bhagavad Gitas. Brent is the instrument by which that happened. And so Brent, from his book table last night, gave every guest to our Sunday feast a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. And as I was going around to the tables, talking to people, welcoming guests, asking if they had any questions, first I went to one a fellow, BYU graduate who still works in the area. His name was Ben. And I noticed that he did not have a copy of the Bhagavad Gita with him. And I was going to ask him, but then he mentioned in the conversation that he had already purchased one some time ago. Now, a little bit later, I was talking to another fellow who was here with his one daughter. I also noticed the same thing. And he also mentioned that he had purchased a Bhagavad Gita. So the only people who did not actually have Bhagavad Gitas on the table beside their plates of prasadam were people that had already acquired the Bhagavad Gita on previous occasions. And it's interesting to note that most of the people who come to the Sunday feast sooner or later acquire a copy of the Bhagavad Gita one way or another. So it was great to see every single person with a Bhagavad Gita. I don't know if Brent exhausted his whole quota of 25 to 30 books. Perhaps the same will be said of next Saturday night's feast in Salt Lake City as well. So we're coming now to the third chapter of the 8th canto. And the third chapter are the prayers of Gajendra, 28 prayers that he tendered to the Lord in his previous life as kin to Indradumna. The recollection of those prayers is now coming to the surface of his consciousness as a result of the life or death situation in which he's entrapped. So we're going to dive into the 28 prayers of Gajendra. It's taken us 69 verses just to set the scene and get to the point where Gajendra is actually talking. But let's just do a recap here. The narration of this story of Gajendra was prompted in the beginning of the 8th canto when Sukadeva Goswami was just thumbing through a list. So and so begat so and so, and so and so begat so and so, and so and so begat so and so, just giving names of parents, and their sons and daughters were king and queens throughout the ages. And then Sukadeva Goswami comes to the fourth Manvantara, and he describes that in the beginning of the fourth Manvantara, there appeared the Supreme Lord in the form of Hari, and he was born as the offspring of Harini and Harimeda, and he saved the elephant Gajendra. So two things caught Maharaj Parikshit's attention. He noted that here is a story about an avatar of Vishnu, and he wasn't going to let Sukadeva Goswami skip over that and continue with his list of names. He said, whoa, 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 hold on a second. Hold on a second. Did you say Hari? Did you say an incarnation of Krishna? Maharaj Parikshit is vitally interested in any and all stories about Krishna. This is a characteristic of pure devotees, but particularly in Maharaj Parikshit's case, he saw Krishna within the womb of his mother. Ashwatthama had launched a nuclear weapon, which was specifically tasked with the job of singling out the little embryo in the womb of the mother. Parikshit was the sole heir. He would be the last surviving member of the Pandava dynasty after everyone was killed on the Kurukshetra war. And Ashwatthama wanted to annihilate from the river to the sea, right? He wanted to annihilate any last remaining member of the Pandava dynasty, and launched this very powerful, very specific weapon. The nuclear weapons in those days weren't so gross as to wipe out an entire city like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing 100,000 innocent citizens. The nuclear facilities which warriors could invoke in those days could pick out one person, one enemy in a crowd of 1,000 people, not harm anyone else, just kill that one person in a crowd, or take out an embryo within the womb of the mother without killing the mother. The Brahmastra was rushing towards Parikshit, who was just a little ball of flesh in the womb of his mother, and Krishna intervened. Krishna covered Parikshit within the womb of his mother, and Parikshit saw Krishna at that time. And he got the name Parikshit, which means the examiner. He was always looking to see once again the face of that personality who he'd met in the womb of his mother, who had saved him. And that was the second reason that Sukadeva Goswami's flipping through his Rolodex of sons and daughters and sons and kings and all. Parikshit said, stop, hold on here a second. Two things caught Parikshit's attention. One was this about Hari? Is this about Krishna? Is this an incarnation of Krishna? If so, I want to hear all the details. And the other one, when Sukadeva had mentioned that Krishna saved somebody, those resonated with Parikshit, because again, he'd seen the Lord in the womb of his mother even before having seen the light of day, and he was saved. So when it popped up that here's an incarnation of Vishnu and he'd come to save someone, Maharaj Parikshit says, stop. I want to hear about this story. Let's take as much time as we need. We're not going to be distracted by sleeping. We're not eating. We're not even drinking water. We're here for one purpose and one person, but only to fill our ears and our hearts with the nectar of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So please tell me more. And interestingly enough, although Parikshit asks for this story because it's an incarnation of Vishnu and because he's saving his devotee, as Sukadeva Goswami launches into the story in the beginning of the 8th canto, he's talking about this place, Tukuta Mountain, within the material world. And granted, it's a heavenly place. It's not on the earthly planets. It's not on the middle planet. It's not on the low. It's on the higher planets of the Lord. Now, normally, there are abundant descriptions of the spiritual world. There are abundant descriptions of Dwarka, Srimad Bhagavatam, of Ayodhya in the Ramayana. There are descriptions of Vrindavan in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. These are all spiritual. There's nothing mundane about them. Natad bhasitu nashisha yadgatavana tadama paramam. The Vrindavan, Ayodhya, Dwarka, these are, even though they manifested themselves within the material world, they are representations, they are depictions, they are replicas of Krishna's own abodes in the spiritual world. Krishna has his own transcendental spiritual abodes in the spiritual world, which are Ayodhya, which are Vrindavan, and which are Dwarka or Vaikuntha. And to describe either Ayodhya or Vrindavan or Dwarka is spiritual. It's entirely spiritual. These are locations within the eternal spiritual world, which is described as not needing artificial illumination from the sun and the moon. In this material world, we need the sun and the moon because it's by nature dark. Without the sun and moon hung in the sky, we would be blind. But that's not the case in the spiritual world. Everything is self-unfolding. There's no need of a sun or moon, except for Lila, except for pastimes. And in fact, the descriptions of Vrindavan are descriptions of the expansions of Radharani. Vrindavan is summed up by saying the trees, the animals, the peacocks, the four-legged animals, the birds, the reptiles, the fish, the insects, the plant life, even the very dust of Vrindavan, they are expansions of Srimati Radharani, an arrangement, Nikunjayuno Ratikari Siddhaya, by which she serves Lord Krishna with all of this paraphernalia. Aradhanam Savisham Vishnarad Tajma Param Tadiyanam Samacharam. Lord Shiva, in answer to a question from Prabhupada in the Padma Purana, he says, of all types of worship, the worship of Vishnu is the highest. But Vishnu Aradhanam Param, higher than worship Vishnu, is Tadiyanam Samacharam, is worship of the paraphernalia. Because the paraphernalia is Radharani, and Vishnu is controlled, conquered by the love of Radharani. So higher than worship of Vishnu is worship of Vishnu's devotees. And his topmost devotee, Radharani, worships him by expanding from her Hladini Shakti, or pleasant potency, all the varieties of life in Vrindavan. Every single particle of dust of which a Vrindavan is meant for the satisfaction of Lord Krishna. Therefore, to describe Vrindavan is entirely spiritual. To describe Ayodhya, Ayodhya is an expansion of Lakshmi, Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. She creates Ayodhya from her energies in order to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rukmini, Dwarka is an expansion of Rukmini, who is another manifestation of Lakshmi, the god of fortune. So describe Vrindavan or Dwarka or Ayodhya is entirely spiritual. But here we find something curious, something odd. Parikshit asked for the story because he identifies it as something highly spiritual, highly instructive, highly uplifting. And in answer to Parikshit's request for the story, Sukadeva starts describing this material location. It's not generated from Radharani, it's not generated from Lakshmi, it's not generated from Rukmini. It's the material is generated from our own perverted, twisted desires for enjoying apart from Krishna. Apart from Krishna, the material world is for the purpose of our forgetting Krishna and forgetting devotional service. So why would Sukadeva go to such lengths of describing the material world? It would seem to cause us to forget Krishna, and that is the point. That's exactly the point. We can't remember Krishna within this material world. We certainly can't remember Krishna in the hellish planets because it's so miserable. There's so much pressing against us. There's so much adversity there that we're all the time trying to keep our head above water, solve the problems of eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Hellish life is by definition a life in which there's so many problems. We don't have time to forget Krishna. We're creating more and more hellish conditions here on earth with all of our wars and dissensions and squabbling. And you see how easy it is to get caught up in the news, how easy it is when you're strolling to all of a sudden you realize I just spent 15 minutes. I just wasted 15 minutes of my life getting the latest news on Israel. Or if you go back to the Trump era, you're so easy to waste 15 minutes on Trevor Noah satirizing Trump. So we've actually created hellish situations in this middle area where it's easier to forget Krishna. It's easy to forget Krishna because of all the politics and all the drama. But normally, the middle location, which includes Earth, is the best position to remember Krishna because it's not too heavenly, it's not too hellish. If it's too hellish, you can't forget Krishna. But if it's too heavenly, if it's too hellish, you can't remember Krishna. If it's too heavenly, the same condition arises. The standard of living, the lifespan, the surroundings are so much better than what we have here on earth that it's easy to become intoxicated by life on the heavenly planets. When the longevity of the inhabitants, the denizens of heaven, extends into the hundreds of thousands of years, why should I think of death and old age, which aren't going to arrive for 250,000 years? So that is why Sukadeva Goswami launches into the description, because it's a prelude to describe Gajendra, who has totally forgotten Krishna. Though he was a devotee in his past life, he was unfairly cursed to take birth as an elephant. And in that elephant's birth, that subhuman birth, he had a dull mind. He had a big, powerful body. He was all brawn, maybe not so much brain. The brawn was emphasized more so than the brain. And because of that powerful body that he got, and then eventually extensions of the body, like sovereignty over the elephants, like domination over all the other jungle animals, like being a husband of multiple wives and having multiple children, because of the body and the extensions of the body, and because of, in spite of the fact that he took birth as an elephant, he took birth in the heavenly planets. He was not just any elephant in Africa or in India as we know it today. He took birth as an elephant in the heavenly planets. So combined with his body, combined with the success of his body and the environment in which he was plunged, and combined with the fact that although cursed and although in a subhuman body, he was living in the heavenly planets where life is quite intoxicating and relatively free, the ravages of birth, death, disease, and old age are not like front and center in the heavenly planets. It's easy to put them aside. It's easy to forget the imperative of executing Krishna consciousness. So all these combined, Gajendra was really, really deep in ignorance. He forgot the ultimate shortcomings of this material world, even as it exists in the heavenly planet. There is birth, there is disease, there is old age, and there is death. No matter where you go in this material world. Krishna cites this verse in the 8th chapter of the Bhagavatam, that in this material world, from the highest to the lowest, all are places of misery where repeated birth and death take place. Krishna doesn't need to say this verse for those who are in hell. They know. They know. Death is imminent. Death is staring him in the face. A version of hell is to take birth as an animal, as prey in this material world, as a mouse or as a rabbit or as a deer. They know they're not going to die of old age. They're going to be eaten. They're going to be torn limb from limb. They're going to be food. One living being is food for another living being. That's the law of material nature. So life is cruel. Life is unfair for most of the inhabitants. They don't need to hear this verse from the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that from the highest planet to the lowest, all the repeated places of birth and death. And we don't need it either. We read about the death toll, 500,000 in Ukraine, 500,000 Russian soldiers, 17,000 Palestinians, of which 7,000 are Hamas so-called fighters that were killed. 1,000 Israelis killed in battle, 1,400 Israelis slaughtered by the October 7th massacre. I just went to 2 funerals 2 weeks ago. Anjali Das Gupta passed away. I've known her since 1992. Kumar Shah passed away. Kumar Shah was thin, not an ounce of fat on his body. He spent 2 hours a day at the gym. He had a positive attitude. He ate well. He thought well. He had a positive. Everyone was his friend, and he just dropped dead with his face in his dinner plate one evening. So we don't here need that verse. We don't need to be reminded necessarily that this is a place of birth and death. As we see it, especially when you get to be my age, every week there are 2 or 3 additional disciples of Prabhupada who have departed their material bodies, hopefully gone back to the spiritual world. But this verse is in the Bhagavad Gita specifically for spirit souls like Gajendra, who are living in the heavenly planets. In the heavenly planets, there is the greatest temptation to forget the miseries of this material world, to forget amongst all the flora and the fauna and living amongst the demigods, and a mountain made of one peak of silver, one peak of gold, one peak of bronze, a mountain, the base of which is washed. The beaches at the base of this mountain are washed by the waves from an ocean of milk. And as the waves roll up on the beach, the chemistry creates emeralds, which can just be gathered. They're just there for the taking. And in fact, even as Gajendra is latched upon by the crocodile, and this battle is waged, which incidentally goes for 1,000 years by the calculation of demigods, who's in the stands? Who fills up the bleachers to watch this epic battle? None other than Brahma, Shiva, Vayu, Indra. The demigods themselves come to watch this epic battle. It's a formula. It's a formula for forgetting Krishna. Just as the Vedas, Krishna also cautions in the Bhagavad Gita, trai-guṇya-viṣhayā, nistrai-guṇyo, nirdvandvo, nitya-sattva-stho, niryoga-kṣhema, ātmavān. It says that the Vedas, the scriptures, the bulk of the Vedic scriptures compiled by Gajendra, deal mostly with the three modes of material nature: ignorance, passion, and goodness. And the path of the Vedas is to elevate yourself from ignorance to passion, and then to elevate yourself from passion to goodness. Urdvam gachanti sattvasha madhye tashanti raja jagani guna vritishu adho patanti tamasha. Those who are in the mode of ignorance are forced to live a lower life as animals or in hellish planets. Those in passion inhabit these middle planetary systems for the most part. And those who have managed to pull themselves up into the mode of goodness, they live in the heavenly planets, just as Gajendra has taken his birth in the heavenly planets. But Krishna says, watch out, be careful. The flowery words of the Vedas seem to promise heavenly delights, long lifespan, minimization of birth, death, disease, and old age, higher standard of living, intoxicatingly stimulating sensual pleasures. All these are there, but you have to be very careful. These are called the flowery words of the Vedas. Oftentimes behind those flowers which are most beautiful, there's poison. The poisonous flowers rely on their beauty to bring the living beings close. One marvels at the beauty and comes too close and gets captured by the man-eating plant. Oftentimes, the most virulent, the most poisonous snakes are the ones with the most beautiful, mesmerizing markings, so they can lull you into a sense of complacency and then pong. So Krishna cautions, yes, the Vedas seem to promise unlimited delights with hardly a trace of misery. You have to be cautious. You have to not be sucked in by the beautiful hymns of the Vedas, which promise heavenly life standard on the higher planets. Because, again, everywhere, from the lowest planet to the highest planet, they're all places of misery where repeated birth and death take place. And therefore, Krishna says, rise above these three modes of material nature, beyond passion, beyond ignorance, beyond goodness, to a state of transcendental, pure spiritual consciousness, freeing yourself from good and bad, hot and cold, high and low, honor and dishonor in this material world. Become sattva-sthita, fixed in the truth of the soul, which has nothing to do with the modes of material nature. The soul has, in its pure liberated state, has no concern whatsoever for good and bad, honor and dishonor, wealth and poverty, gain and safety in this material world, and be situated in the self. And it's very telling that towards the end of Gajendra's 28 prayers, at first, when the scene opens, with the initial descriptions, Gajendra is very fearful for his life. He's shocked. His world is rocked. And all of a sudden, in the midst of all this euphoria, he hadn't given a thought to his own vulnerability for decades. And yet all of a sudden, he's fighting for his life, barely hanging on to terra firma, can barely keep his footing in the bottom of the lake as he's being dragged further. Everybody has experienced that when you first go into the water and the water just comes up to your ankles, you're very confident. And you go a little bit further into the water and the water comes up to your knees. You're okay. You go a little further and the water comes up to your thighs. You go a little further and the water comes up to your waist. You're okay with all of that. Although there may be some waves hit you in the solar plexus. But then you go where the medium, sometimes the waves are a little higher, sometimes they're a little lower, but the medium is your chest. And at that point, you start to feel a little anxious. You know, the stories that you've heard throughout your life of people being grabbed by an undertow, a riptide, start to come to mind. Your feet are not solidly on the earth because your body now is buoyed by water. So your feet are treading very lightly. They're just touching earth. The balls of your feet are touching. You're not standing with your weight on the earth because now you're more weightless and you're less in control of where you're going to go. And at this point, when the water is chest high, then you ask yourself a serious question. Do I want to go any further? Seriously, I'm in the twilight zone here. I shouldn't go any further and play unless you're a very good swimmer, because at this point you have to make a decision. If I'm going to go any further, I have to be able to swim, or I have to be able to catch a wave back to shore. Gajendra is coming to that point where his self-confidence has eroded almost to nil. He's deep enough in the water that even though he weighs 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 pounds, he's achieved that state of, or been inflicted with that state of weightlessness, whereby instead of being solidly grounded, sometimes in yoga, during the mountain pose, there's a yoga pose called the mountain pose. Nothing fancy about it, nothing special about it. You just stand and you straighten your back, you make sure your spine's straight. You put your shoulders back so that they're horizontal. You have your arms down. But the yoga teacher will instruct you, concentrate on planting your feet. Concentrate on having your feet solidly on the ground and distributing your weight evenly throughout the breadth of your feet. And just feel yourself on the ground. Feel your 120, 150, 190, 200 pounds pressing down on the ground through every square centimeter on your feet. What Gajendra is experiencing is exactly the opposite. Even though he weighs thousands of pounds, there's hardly any weight being transferred from his body down to the bottom of the lake. It's all, so he's very scared. He's very apprehensive, and he doesn't have the option to go back because the crocodile's pulling the other direction. It's all he can do not to be pulled more deeply into the water. He's exerting all of his energy not to keep the situation from getting worse. The problem is, this is a fight that lasted for 1,000 years. How long can he expend all of his energy just to preserve the status quo? How long can you tread water before you get tired, before you get actually dehydrated? He doesn't have food. He doesn't have water. So his whole world is rocked from the very, very foundation. And it was all because he got too close to the beautiful flower, the beautiful flowery words of the Vedas. He bought into it. He sold himself out for heaven delights in the planets of the demigods. And Krishna asks us, don't sell your soul. You're better than that. You're better than a demigod. You're better than the heavenly planets. Krishna wants for us the best that he can offer, which is eternal life in the spiritual world. And so he enjoins Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, go beyond sattva, go beyond goodness to viṣhayā. The difference between goodness, piety and righteousness and honesty and integrity and peacefulness, all the qualities that are inherent in the mode of goodness, the difference between sattva and viṣhayā is that viṣhayā means you don't care about any of those other qualities and attributes which come and go. You only care about remembering Krishna wherever you are, whether it be in hell, whether it be in heaven, whether it be high, whether it be low, whether it be middle. The imperative for someone who is purely in goodness, situated in transcendence, is, am I remembering Krishna? And the answer in Gajendra's case, as the story opens, is no, he's not remembering Krishna. So he's scared to death as things unfold. And he's afraid that he's going to lose his life. That's his main concern, that I lose my life, I lose my wives, I lose my children, I lose my residence in the heavenly planets, I lose my lifespan. But it's interesting to note, and we'll come to this, towards the end of his prayers, he says, Krishna, I don't want to live. From being petrified that he would lose his life, he's done a complete turnabout. There's been a complete transformation of his heart to the point where he realizes that trying to hang on to this temporary material body, especially that of a subhuman like an elephant, is foolish. We should be eager. We should act in such a way. We should strategically organize our lifespan in such a way that we get rid of this material body, and we never, upon leaving this material body, have to take another one in this material world. Janma karma evam yobidi chakva deham prana neti mariti sarjana. We should submerge ourselves, absorb ourselves in the pastimes of Krishna. We should understand the transcendental nature of Krishna's birth and activities to such a point that we're head over heels in love. We're sold out, not to material life, but we're sold out to Krishna. We're Krishna conscious at the time of leaving this body, and we do not again take another material body in this material world. And that's the conclusion. It's one of the last prayers that Gajendra utters. We will come to it eventually, but Gajendra says, Lord, don't save me. Don't save me. I don't care for this material body. Let me die, because now I'm in Krishna consciousness. And that's what's important, to remember Krishna. Whether you're alive or dead, whether you're in heaven or hell, is not the important point. The important point is, am I remembering Krishna? Because when you're remembering Krishna, you're liberated. And when you're forgetting Krishna, you're conditioned. Better to be in hell and remember Krishna than to be in heaven and to forget Krishna. Narayana para sarve nakutashkana shargabhava apitulyata darshana. We know the story of Chitraketu. Chitraketu was also unfairly cursed. Just as Gajendra had been unfairly cursed in his previous life to take birth as an elephant, Chitraketu was unfairly cursed by Parvati to take birth as a demon. But he retained the Krishna consciousness of his former life, even in that birth as a demon. And in the 6th canto, he famously declares, Narayana para sarve nakuta sharvago apitulyata. Here, Chitraketu is facing the chief of the demigods, the king of the heavenly planets, Indra. Indra has been charged with none other than Vishnu to kill Chitraketu. Indra has got a shield, a protective shield made by the bones of Dadichi and suffused with the power of Vishnu. He's got a weapon. He's got the thunderbolt, the most powerful of all weapons, which can never be thwarted. And he's got the blessing of Vishnu. He's got the blessings of the demigods. He's got the blessing of Dadichi. He can't lose. But when he sees the size and the ferocity of Chitraketu, in spite of all the advantages, in spite of the assurance from Krishna himself that he will have victory, he loses faith. He loses heart. He trembles and he starts to think of turning around and taking off. And Chitraketu senses, his unstable position. And he encouraged, and what have we got here? We've got a demigod, the king of the heavenly planet, and he's totally forgotten Krishna. Krishna has just recently empowered him. Krishna just recently put an invincible arm on him. Krishna just recently sent him off. Go, 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 go. You'll be victorious. And he's already within moments lost his faith in the assurance of Vishnu. And he's reduced to a trembling shell of a man. And here's Chitraketu, who's been cursed as a demon. He's lived and grown up in the most unfavorable circumstances for Krishna consciousness. He hasn't had good association. He's risen from the hellish planets to create havoc in the middle and the earthly planets. But he is 100% Krishna conscious. So he has the high ground. It's the demon who has to give the pep talk to the so-called devotee. First of all, he tells Indra, if you run away in battle, then you're no better than the stool of your parents. Kimba chirir matir bababi nahi pritagara. Kimbaru chirir matur bababi nahi bitapara. Those who run away in battle, those from the warrior class who run away in battle, they are no better than stool. And those who kill those running away are also not worthy of the name warrior. And then he says, having taken away from Indra the option of running away, predicated his mind, blocked that thought process. Then he says, Nanveshe vrajatava shakatejasha hadichish tapashatate teneva shatram jahiva yato harir vijaya shriyagarasati. He reminds Indra of what he should be very well aware of. Nanveshe vraja, you're wielding the thunderbolt, which is the most powerful weapon of all. You've got the armor of Didichesh, the armor made from the bones of Didicha. Didicha was the greatest tapasya, the greatest ascetic, the greatest yogi, and he gave up his life just so that you could be protected during this battle. I can't lay a finger on you. You have the perfect defense because you're armored by the bones of the sage Didichi. Not only that, but Vishnu has declared you invulnerable. You have got the protection of Vishnu. Look at Arjuna. Arjuna at Kurukshetra faced he was vastly outnumbered. He was outmanned by such lethal warriors as Bhishma, Dronacharya, Ashwatthama. The odd makers in Vegas would not have given Arjuna even 101 chance of winning the Kurukshetra war. But because Krishna was his chariot driver, even as a non-combatant, the other side didn't have a chance. So Vrikasura is telling Indra, you've got Krishna on your side, you've got the thunderbolt, you've got the Dichi, you've got the good wishes of demigods. Come on, man. Come on. And as far as I'm concerned, because I'm thinking of Krishna, this is going to be a win situation. All you have to do is throw that thunderbolt. Just throw it. That's all you have to do. That's what you do. That's your personal weapon. You have thrown it. You have conquered so many times in the past. So just do what you've done so many other times. And don't worry about me. I want to die. I want to give up this demoniac body because I am 100% Krishna consciousness. And such, I will not take another body in this material world, but will go back home, back to God. Arjuna, tell the people boldly, Krishna devotee never dies. Men and women, high and lowly, everyone's equal in my eyes. Anyone who comes to me will never be denied. Bhakti yoga will set you free. Success is guaranteed. Think of me, become my devotee, and you'll live with me eternally. So even though Gajendra was presented with all the obstacles on the path of Krishna consciousness in the terms of his birth, because some or other was able to remember Krishna, he overcame all the negatives and he went back to home, back to God. Similarly, Gajendra, on the face of it, had no chance to get liberation in the body of an elephant living in the intoxicating atmosphere with all the sensuality and hedonism which was available to him in the heavenly planets. And yet some or other, by the mercy of the Lord, by the grace of the Lord, crocodile latched onto his leg and forcibly brought him up to the level of Krishna consciousness, to the point where at the end of his prayers, he says, I no longer want to maintain a hold on this material body. He says, I'm no longer interested in manipulating circumstances in order to maximize this material world, the hot and cold, the honor and dishonor. Yeshamitam gitam papam gana nirvandvo bhajanti mam dridvaha. Gajendra is now going to join the ranks of those great souls, those stalwarts who by dint of their devotional service care not for the dualities of this material world, by virtue of absorption in Krishna consciousness, remembering Krishna at all times and never forgetting him. They go beyond the Vedas, beyond the modes of material nature, beyond the flowery words of the Vedas, beyond that which is temporary, beyond this material world, which is certified by the Lord as a place of misery where repeated birth and death take place, back to home, back to Godhead. Remember Krishna and never forget him. There is only they were personified by both Chitraketu and Gajendra. In spite of all the disadvantages, their lives were successful because they followed the two most important rules. And when everything is said and done, there are only two rules for making your life successful. The foremost thing to do under all circumstances is to remember Krishna. And the foremost thing not to do under all circumstances is to forget Krishna. Sukadeva Goswami opens his narration with an elaborate description of the heavenly planets, just to give us a rundown, a map of a situation in which there is a very high chance of forgetting Krishna. But this is the lull before the storm. Gajendra is lulled in the sense gratification, lulled into sensuality, lulled into hedonism. But Krishna is going to arrive as his savior, just as the storm arrives after the lull, to shake everything up. Krishna is shaking the Krishna consciousness of Gajendra from his previous life. Just like in an earthquake, sometimes gold, which has been buried in a previous age, when the earth is in a state of disruption and upheaval, sometimes treasures which are buried come to the surface. So the treasure of Gajendra's Krishna consciousness from his previous life, in the earthquake, in the upheaval in which he's involved, in the upheaval in which he's caught, captured, the great benefit, the great rich advantage of this arrangement by the Lord is that the gold, the beauty, the treasure of his Krishna consciousness from a previous life is going to come to the surface. Lord, in spite of my shame, I'm calling your name in the midst of the vice. Please reclaim me from the might of the crocodile's bite. Release me from the teeth of the croc, block ignorance in my life, and lock me into your devotional service. Lord, release me from the teeth of the croc, block ignorance in my life, and lock me into your devotional service. Let my purpose rise once again to the surface. Lord, I'm knocking at your door. Please keep me close from now until evermore. And when the Lord heard the eloquent prayers of the elephant, he steered Guru to the spot, and he sheared the crocodile's head from his body with a chakra. When the reptile lay dead and Gajendra was shed of his dread, he resumed the thread of his prayers and said, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Gajendra. Let's go to the top here. John Malik was the first one to jump on board, aside from Rob, who always asks to be let into the Zoom waiting room a few minutes before we launch and go live. Rob is always our first participant. John second, Brent third, Natasha fourth, Ātmavān, all the way from South Africa. Thank you for jumping on board, Ātmavān. I can't imagine what time it is there, all the way over on the other side of the world, probably late at night. But thank you for joining us. Brent Spencer, again, a devotee is never bored hearing about the Lord. Nice little quip there. From Kenya, John Makari. Amen. Lakshmi-nrsimha. He had a birthday party for his wife recently where a lot of members of the community, what community would that be, Alachua? But I thought you moved from Alachua somewhere else. Anyway, many devotees attended the recent birthday party of his wife, who's a physician, Russian-born. It looked like a gala affair, a lot of wonderful prasadam, good association. Goes without saying, beautiful kirtan. Lakshmi-nrsimha has the voice of a Gandharva. And he shares with us his thought for this morning. He says, every day serves as a reminder that my death is certain and I need to get serious about service to Prabhupada and the Supreme Lord. Hear, hear. Anjali, the queen of comments, says, just ground yourself. Just ground yourself. Brent, hot or cold, heaven or hell, near or far, just remember Krishna wherever you are. Very, very succinct and to the point. Our old friend Krish Castro, who spent 1 full year here as a volunteer, weighs in with a hearty Hare Krishna. Chad, Willwright, Hare Krishna, Chad. Oh yeah, Lakshmi Boca Raton. There's quite a large community of devotees in Boca Raton. That's Louisiana, I think. I remember I went to Boca Raton, I think University of Louisiana or Louisiana State University is there. Gajendra, the president of the Picayune community, had done bookings for me at college campuses. And so, he said, you've got this sociology class to give at Boca. So we drove all the way up from New Orleans at the time. And the teacher was incredibly hostile. I don't know what set him off. Maybe he expected, I don't know what Gajendra had said by way of selling him on the idea of having me come to speak, but he obviously expected some Indian, and he obviously expected something cliche about the caste system and all. So I hadn't gotten more than a minute or two into my talk, and he starts coming out with these really nasty comments, and he asked us to leave. We win him over. Usually it's a huge success, a victory when we go into the college classroom. But this man, for some reason, he was in a really bad mood. Maybe Yogendra Vandana had said something that wasn't quite exactly accurate. I don't know. But boy, we were given the, what do they call it? The shuffle. We were rushed right out of there. That was unflattering. It's funny how when your mind stores all these negative rejections and they immediately jump to the surface. I wish the good things, the successes, the triumphs were as quick to come to the forefront of our consciousness as were the rejections. Anyway, that all those things are triggered. Oh, wait, Boca Raton. Okay, all right, I'm completely off. What is it? Oh, Baton Rouge. Never mind. Caru 77. I've got it right. Yes, 1 hour north of Miami. Okay. Anyway, you got unbidden a story from my past. Thanks to all those, John, Malik, Brent Spencer, and Natasha, Ātmavān from Kenya, John, and Lakshmi-nrsimha, Anjali, Natasha, Chad. Thanks to all of you for joining me. And we go to, last but not least, Rob, who's been listening for years now. Rob has not only listened to every episode pretty much of the wisdom of the sages, and there must be about 1,500 of them now, but we've done this probably 300 times, 350 times since the beginning of COVID. And I don't think Rob's missed more than 1 or 2. So good on you, Rob. Thank you for your faithfulness. It will be rewarded.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Hare. Do you have any idea how many of these we've done since
I
2020?
I don't.
3 a week, 150 a year. So that's close to 150 a year. It's been 20, 21, 22, 23. It's almost 4 years. So it would be somewhere in the realm of 50 times 4 is 200 anyway. No, 3 a week. 50 times 4 times 3. Yes. We should be up somewhere around 600, at least over 500. And Rob's been at every one except maybe 1 or 2. Anyway, Rob, what have you got in terms of some rhyming truths for us today?
All right. Too much bad or too much good makes it hard to remember as we should.
Very nice. Nice.
Don't miss the spiritual because of the material.
Mm-hmm.
Beware of flowery words that do not serve.
Right, right.
We will lose our children, our wife, and life. Look to Krishna in that strife.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Maya is denied when we remember Krishna is on our side.
Nice. Every single one of those spoke to one of the truths that we discussed this morning. So thanks very much for your focus. Thanks for your attention. And thanks very much for your conclusive words. Please do send them to me. That's it for Motivational Monday. Appreciate all of you. And I look forward to being in your association tomorrow for Transcendental Tuesday. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare.